Welcome to the first episode of Let's Talk Lore, where we discuss certain things about our adventure. Today I think we're going to discuss a little bit about the lore in Agoth Doomhand and the Skulls of Power, as well as what a time dragon found in the Crystal Plains might sound like. And we're going to use this for our next session in a week from now. This is Chris.
I'm Chris. I play and I'm the Green Hero. And Spencer is the Dungeon Master, the master creator of this entire world. Let's get into it.
Let's get in there.
That's what I'm going to leave it right there.
That's what Doomhand said.
So, lore. What location did you have in mind? Because I have many.
I guess we could start off. Do you want to start with the beginning, or do you want to start with the trivium?
Up to you. We can start. Yeah, I think we're gonna revisit there soon.
There's so many question marks in the trivium. Like, for example, what is it? I have no idea yet. Well, sort of.
Where is it? I have no idea yet. What about? Let's start with where my background is in Artemisia.
Oh, the Artemisian Forest.
Yeah, because you just had a couple posts about about Jonathan.
Yes.
Tree. All right, so Artemisia Forest. That's where we came out of Trivium.
Right. So the Trivium was just a basic prologue scenario. It was about a 4-session scenario just to get my hands around how to DM, but also introduce the characters to perhaps a never-ending story, which it seems. We're on our 57th session, which is pretty good. I know I've spoken to some other dungeon masters and players on Instagram on our account, and who were just asking what are we doing, what kind of software we're using, and so on and so forth. And they said one of the guys said they had a 30-year story. Well, I don't know if it's a story though. I think they just play it, but it's still.
Well, it's like a game going for 30 years in the same world.
That's insane. We've been doing it for like every other week for pretty consistently, by the way.
Just over 2 years.
Yeah, and it's been pretty good. But anyway, to get back to it, the Trivium area was just I would have the characters just randomly showed up they had a dream. They all told me their background stories, and I told them to have a dream. They woke up in the Trivium, and then they got to know each other, figure out who the bad guys were. And one of the first areas that they left often was the Artemisian Forest.
Now we had three choices of exits. The water area, towards what we thought. So, backtracking to Trivium, we got to get a glimpse at the whole story, the main story that we're walking into. All the skulls, all the main players. We oversaw a high-level meeting and just have to see the brief overview of everything that we're getting into.
In the Trivium session 4? Session 4?
Session 3.
Oh, yeah, with Loxodon? Okay, so...
No, before then, actually, I think it was session 2. Not session 2. No, session 2 was the weird walls.
Crazy. Yeah, that was nuts.
No. So, session 3, when we came out onto the balconies and we oversaw this meeting, grand meeting.
You know what? It was session 4 because I broke down session 4 into 2. But yeah, go ahead. You guys snuck out onto the balcony.
Yeah, we oversaw a meeting of these quote sages or people who possessed the skulls.
All in all the video games growing up, you always had like a Zelda. I was a big Zelda guy, so you always had your forest, your fire, your water, your shadow, your what was the other one? Oh, like a desert one, which I always sort of like gave up at the desert one. I was like, this is getting too difficult. Maybe it was even the shadow, but I always had this idea when creating this. Once I got people hooked on, to just kind of show them the different sages. So I took the idea of the sages from Zelda for sure, Ocarina of Time. And there's a lot of Zeldas.
Yeah.
It's definitely when you guys are walking down the dungeon there, and you overheard the sages talking to each other about how Doomhand was coming for their skulls. I was worried that you guys were trying to fight the bad guys.
Well, we didn't have a chance to try and fight the bad guys because, if I remember correctly, as soon after we came onto the balcony, had that whole cutscene, was the infamous rope tying incident.
Yeah.
The very first.
Yeah, if you guys don't know, our group is pretty bad at tying ropes, and I always make them do, after this session, I make them do survival checks sometimes when they tie a rope, just as a little subtle reminder not to tie a weak rope. And it shows up a lot.
Like,
but
gotta make sure the knot is correct.
So they used a rope and they fell every time. And then when they got down, they had a nice little puzzle. And when they solved the puzzle, the doors opened to the first real realm in the story, the Artemisian Forest.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the area of the green skull, or it was somewhere. It was going to be somewhere in there. Didn't quite know where it was going to be when I started. Just like I think you should leave open. You know, you shouldn't have an ending sort of when you do this stuff. I think you should leave it open. But the Artemisian Forest, which was connected to your green character, so I would have it influence your, or at least you'd feel one with the nature in the Artemisian Forest. I think the Artemisian Forest was huge, so it was tough to run that one because it was like, how do you run a dungeon crawl in a forest? But you got to remember, we're also doing it on Tabletop Simulator, so it's not like you have a table.
Right.
So how do you keep it feeling big on a tabletop? And my idea was to just have these like big trees on the side, sort of a never-ending path, and I can just recreate that area over and over, but have different tables for different things that you could run into, which is pretty cool. But
the thing that felt nice about going through there is we were at intersections, and then in between that was almost like the zoning out of the area to zone like a Final Fantasy. Like you're running around the big map of like, yeah, we're in the forest, we're doing here, and like looking at the hand-drawn map we had of like finding where we're going, and then once we knew where we're going, we're like, all right, we're gonna run along this path. Then we like zone into an encounter. It felt like there was distance between it, and it was like we only came into a map when something happened.
Oh, it was great. You guys, so we would travel through the forest, just like in Zelda. I took this straight out of Zelda. When you made the wrong turn, you just got lost and would show back up at the beginning. So that kind of made you want to create a map to try to figure out where you were.
Well, that reminded me Final Fantasy VII, the snow area where you had to follow the stakes, and if you got lost, you started over again. Yeah. Of like, it very much felt like you got lost in the woods and somehow ended back up on the main trail. Here, start over.
Yeah, that was great. Some of them, sometimes though, you'd come back to the beginning, and then you remember the tree ant gave. So at the very beginning, when you came out of the Trivium, you followed the tree ant. You had some quicksand to deal with, and you followed this tree ant. You guys weren't quite sure as to whether or not you guys were going to have to fight the tree ant, who the tree ant was. But it turns out he was the guardian of he was an elder tree. So old that he doesn't know his name. You gotta imagine his force is, I don't know how, thousands of years old. You can't remember his name, but he's the guardian, one of the guardians of the forest. And he's a guardian of the Green Skull. He helps guard the Green Skull, rather. But he offered you that little sanctuary, so when you get lost, you come back to the main area. You guys can continue to go out if you want, or do a long rest. Sometimes those getting lost was a good thing to have happen.
That forest brought more mayhem than I was expecting.
It was good. I mean, I think the detail in it, I enjoyed running it because like I did a lot of background research on like how do I make it interesting, because I was a newbie DM, and I still consider myself relatively newbie, but I just wanted to keep it interesting, so I looked up a bunch of different quotes. So every time you would travel from one area to another, I would tell you, you guys are walking another different locations. I had a spreadsheet of like 20 different locations, and to go from A to B, or actually it was to get to the random location that I would roll to, took a period of time. And I would tell you what you heard. There's a lot of whispering, so I would read quotes from different I had some like Robert Frost in there. I don't know if anyone picked that up, but that was funny. And then as soon as that happened, you'd have an encounter or a what I called a happening. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to fight something, like the mischievous children spirits that were like just joking around with you. And if you had let them alone, they would be nice to you. But if you
it was like friendly with them, and they're like, yeah, okay, cool, we're good. Here's a gift for you. Yeah. After Aranis and Sprock were like, I'm gonna kill this thing.
Yeah. We had a character show up halfway through, or another player show up rather halfway through. Well, not even halfway, about a third into the forest. So this was like session 7, maybe the third session of the forest, which was pretty cool. But how do you introduce a new character? At that point, I think you guys were in it. At that point, I think you guys had committed to like at least find the green skull.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that I liked about how you set up the forest was we had our sanctuary, and then there was like a stage room, I guess you would call it. It was like anytime we'd come out of the safe zone, it was like before we entered the world, like something might have happened. Or like we're on our way back to the safe zone, and before we get there, it's always this one specific space. So we knew that like if something's gonna happen, this is gonna be the stage for it. So it's like the fight with Jonathan and the scene that you're gonna describe with Valley and the zombies.
Oh, that was great. You guys well, first off, let's remember I think it was George or Gregory and Martha, who were just 2 trees.
Yep, 2 trees having conversations.
There was like a big wall that you guys couldn't get around. You guys realized you had to pull chains to pull the wall up and get through. And you guys finally got through, and you found and this wasn't something that was planned. You guys found I just dropped the logs by accident onto the tabletop, and I was like, well, I'm not going to give these guys a magical item. They're just going to find a dead tree ant. So that was the beginning of Jonathan, and you guys were like, well, who's the dead tree ant? And I think Aranis asked
or something.
Sprock is a druid, so he spoke to the trees, and he was like, wait a minute, before we go, who's this dead tree? And it turned out that it was Jonathan, and the whole forest got pissed off about the fact that Jonathan was destroyed and killed. That was great.
We rallied the forest around Jonathan.
It was great. And that came back later. The forest was like so upset about it when you guys fought the centaurs. They helped you out. That fight was a little too tough, so that some of them, the forest would grab the centaurs and pull them into the forest and to disappear into the mud.
Wasn't that also too tough?
Yeah.
There are other factors.
But yeah, there are other factors like the lycanthropy. That was great. So when we had a character who couldn't show up for one session, he thought Aranis thought that he couldn't show up for the session. So I told him, I was like, don't worry, I'll give you a cool backstory in our Discord chat. And I was like, you're going to run off and you will have, because you guys had just fought the wolves. Mm-hmm. And I was like, Aaron, it's okay. So you're going to just disappear for the session and you're going to come back. And when you come back, you're going to have to deal with lycanthropy. And, as sort of like a punishment, but a cool way to, no punishment, but like, you're now a werewolf.
To be clear, he was perfectly okay with that.
Oh yeah, he was good. And he was so okay with it that he canceled his like dinner or whatever it was, and he joined us and played. He was like, all right, so I'm a werewolf. I'm not actually going to miss that session.
I didn't realize that's what happened.
Yeah, so I was like, oh crap, now I gotta like figure out what to do with Jonathan. So I had the lycanthropy slowly. It was a slow progress. So he played a couple sessions without it actually turning into the werewolf. And I told him, this lycanthropy was like, if you automatically turn if the moon is full, but if you get angry enough or scared enough, it causes you to spawn, right? And it just so happened that Jonathan, as it turns out, was a friend of the Elder Tree, and this is something that just came up recently. And he was actually trying to cure. He was focused on curing the forest of werewolf issues. And so when you guys ran into the skeleton Doomhand, and he showed you his true powers, because Doomhand is a necromancer. He brought back Jonathan, the tree ant zombie, to life, which was sick. But it just so happened that he had a keyhole. He had a keyhole sort of dug into his body, and that's I gave Matt the key. Matt was our new character named Valley, and that was a good introduction, I thought, to bringing a character in that wasn't necessarily sure with what's going on in this story. But it's a weird story though, because it's not taken from any books. It's just kind of unraveling. But I think it's pretty good. And then after that,
the main story of the forest. This is all just precursor stuff. The main story of the forest was Fawn.
Oh yeah, who forgot about Fawn? So Fawn was just a simple thief, a bard thief living in the forest, stealing from travelers, and then he got mixed up with our boy Doomhand, and rumor has it that the heroes from another plane of existence, perhaps, maybe from this world.
Well,
right? Well, yours is definitely from this world.
Yes, my current one.
Props to your backstories. And it turns out that Fawn and Doomhand were working together, and Fawn would show up randomly, and I wanted Fawn to just like steal an item, or make Fawn
just mess with everyone.
Yeah, and just like use a level 7 like spell to just disappear, like the plane walk out of there when you guys got pissed off enough. The second time, which I'm going to be showing in a reel on Instagram. Yeah.
The dimension door.
Yeah,
when I thought I got him, and then he broke free.
It was great.
So pissed.
Yeah, it was so good.
So mad.
You guys got so angry that Aaron is turned into the werewolf. And
bit me.
And bit you, and then you had lycanthropy. So every single time that you guys would get angry at each other or whatever, poor Sprock and Valley were set to try to calm you guys down, which was pretty good.
I do like how it originally started with Aranis and Rena being the crazy ones, and Sprock was like the normal person just trying to keep everyone in line, and now Sprock's the whatever he is, the Mind Flayer.
Oh yeah,
Drow, Druid, hybrid, everything.
Because of the lycanthropy, I created this so the way the Artemisian Forest was going to work is, first off, you got to go through it. You don't have to fight everyone. You don't have to kill Fawn. Obviously, I think I know the players well enough. They are completionists.
We did have a map.
The Elder Tree told you guys you need to make a
a token of the jaws, the claws, and the.
So there were like bowls that you guys had to fill with bear claws, jaw, spider webs.
Spider webs. That's the one.
Webs.
Yeah.
And you guys did all of that, and then I remember the sanctuary opened up, and you saw a sign that said "Ware Farm." So because of lycanthropy, I thought, well, what if they go to on their way to the forest, the last town in Artemisia? What if on their way they run into a farm called Ware Farm, where all the animals are were animals and whatnot, were chickens and stuff like that, which didn't really show itself too much. Like they had a werebear there and stuff like that. But you guys, instead of going on to confront Doomhand and go to Artemisia, which was like, you guys played 8 sessions. That's like literally 24 hours of gameplay. And you guys stopped and you're like, you know what? Let's go kick this guy's ass.
Well, he stole
stuff
from us, and we're like, we know where he is. It's the last place on this map. We're never coming back here. Let's get this guy, and then let's go.
Poor Fawn. Poor guy. The first NPC, like real NPC I played, poor Fawn. That guy got his ass kicked. But it was good. That was a good
That was a tough fight. That was a tough fight.
And believe it or not, it was Sprock, the quiet and humble, that ripped his... How did you describe it? He's like...
With spaghetti?
Yeah, I bit his jaw. I bit his neck in half, and it spewed out like spaghetti. Anyway, that was a good death. That was the first good death. Then you guys went through the were farm and found Gabriella. Turns out Gabriella was the sage of the Green Skull.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to like figure out how does that connect to the Elder Tree, and it turns out that the green goblins in the Artemisian forest are actually working with the forest itself to try to keep it alive and fresh. So
protected.
Yes, well protected. So green goblins live in a town in the forest called Artemisia, aka the Artemisian Forest, and the Elder Tree works with the goblins to try to keep the forest safe from outsiders and unwanted, intruders. But at the same time, the goblins were getting affected by this lycanthropy, and Jonathan was the tree that was trying to cure the goblin guards from their lycanthropy, and died doing so. But he did find the cure, which was...
It was desert moss and vampire teeth.
Desert moss and vampire teeth. That's right.
I remember that because I remember asking many people if they had or knew where we could get desert moss or vampire teeth.
Oh, it turns out the chapel in the Ware Farm was where
the teeth were.
What was that guy's name? That's a good question.
Oh, where you made me sing?
Yeah,
the first time.
Oh yeah, I love bringing in music from the real world into it. I had Rena sing Backstreet Boys to enter the. That was good. The little side quest.
Mm-hmm.
To figure out what the note. I had your character see a note that just randomly gets shot to a tree during his turn. He picked up the note and put it in his pocket, and I gave him. And oh yeah, you already had a. What was it? A dwarf deciphering.
A key of some sort.
That's hilarious. That's great.
Well, the best part about that was you gave me that song well before it was needed. So I was like, every random shrine or like altar or statue or platform, Reno was just like, hold on, I have to try something really quick. And just started singing it and nothing happened.
Everyone's like, why do you keep singing? What was the song name? It was
It's I Want It That Way.
I Want It That, yeah. All of a sudden, Chris just breaks out into I Want It That Way lyrics. It's like, Aaron's like sitting there with his knife ready to go to battle. He's like, this is, what? That was good.
But it opened something finally. Yeah. Well, that was a fun forest.
Yeah.
It was like three things that we had to get, and each one was uniquely different than the other. So we got to know the lore and the backstory of the forest. We had a mini boss that we didn't have to kill, but we chose to kill.
I found that running the forest was a little bit easier than running other sessions. Just because, well, one, it was the first big dungeon crawl. I mean, you gotta remember that the forest was set up like almost like a dungeon, but it was just very wide and very tall trees. And if you wanted, you could cut through the trees if you wanted to, but you would have to take a certain level of damage because
The trees were alive.
the trees were alive.
They fight back.
So I like to try to keep it like a dungeon crawl, but open it out in nature, which was the tricky part. But I think it worked out. I think it was pretty good.
It was good.
Yeah, and that whole time it gave me a lot of room to work on the actual story of Doomhand, which was great because I had to figure that part out as we went. I sort of knew about the sages. I don't think Loxit had told you. I don't think I had the prologue mapped out. I knew I had. There were 6 skulls. Doomhand is looking for them, and I didn't know exactly why until we got to Artemisia, and then I was like, "This is going to be good." I think.
And then it was like lore drop.
Yeah.
Here, we're going on a special thing. Lore drop, come back, all hell broke loose.
And we have
But let's get right into it.
Yeah. Looks good. Well, lore drops are good. I found that. When did we do the lore drop? Oh, you guys. The city was getting after you. So you took over for the DMing for a little bit. We did
Sir Richard's Carnival.
Sir Richard's Carnival, which is going to be very interesting for me to put on Instagram because your version of DMing, which I love as well, is a lot different than mine. So it's going to be. I have some good screenshots from it though. So it'll be good. Because tabletop it allows you to draw it out like a normal
Map.
Yeah, normal map, so you don't have to use the
minis.
Yeah, I like the minis, but
No, the minis are great.
so yeah, that was
The forest.
the worst. A lot of Robert Frost quotes that just went in one ear and out the other. But
We weren't the only people who had that happen to Robert Frost quotes.
yeah, it's true. In fact, I've heard it so many. I was like an English major in college, almost. One Robert Frost poem away from.
In one ear and right out the other.
Yeah. So that was the forest.
That was the forest. That was good. Well, thank you for the information about the forest.
You're welcome.
On to another topic.
Another topic. Now this is the
Whoa,
topic.
hold on. I think we need to take a short break. 2-minute pause. We can keep it rolling. That was good.
It's pretty
That was
good.
good.
People like stories, so if you ever get stuck, I think you just tell a story about what happened.
So my whole job here is to just enable you to try and keep telling stories. So whenever you finish a story, it's loop that back to another story for you to tell.
Put your screen here.